for a second while I get it all organized here. Sorry. It is August 19th, and we are back up to speed. I apologize for any delays for those of you that have been righteously religious and hanging out with me every night. Got back from vacation, had to play a little catch up. So I appreciate you. Love you very much. Thank you for hanging out with me this year. We're getting through this, and this is the furthest I've ever read the Bible. So kind of proud of myself, and I'm actually getting a lot out of it, except for some of the names. Good Lord. Um, Tonight we're going to be reading Esther 4:1 through 7:10, 1 Corinthians 12:1 through 26, Psalms 36, 1 through 12, and Proverbs 21 and 22. 1 Corinthians 13. Let's see if that's tomorrow night. Tomorrow is the 20th. Bear with me. 1 Corinthians 12, 1 Corinthians 13, 13. Okay. It is about the chapter of love. Oh, tomorrow's going to be fun. August 20th. So we're looking forward to that. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8 is like my go-to when you go to weddings or whatever. It's the definition of love, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. So tonight, we like to do the Lord's Prayer before we get started, so if you will join in with me, I greatly appreciate it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory forever and ever. Amen. Esther 4:1 through 7:10. When Mordecai learned what had been done, he ripped his clothes to shreds and put on a sackcloth and ashes. Then he went out in the streets and in the city, crying out in loud and bitter cries. He came only as far as the king's gate, for no one dressed in sackcloth was allowed to enter the king's gate. As the king's order was posted in every province, there was loud lament among the Jews, fasting, weeping, wailing, and most of them stretched out on sackcloth and ashes. Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her the queen was stunned. She sent fresh clothes to Mordecai so he could take off his sackcloth, but he wouldn't accept them. Esther called for Hacketh, one of the royal eunuchs whom the king had assigned to wait on her, and told him to go to Mordecai and get the full story of what was happening. So Hathach went to Mordecai in the town square in the front of the king's gate, and Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him. He also told him the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to deposit in the royal bank to finance the massacre of the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the bulletin that had been posted in the Susa ordering the massacre so that he could show it to Esther when he reported back to the instructions to go to the king and intercede and plead with him for her people. Hathach came back and told Esther everything. Mordecai, he said. Esther talked it over with Hathach, and they sent him back to Mordecai with the message. Everyone who works for the king here, and even the people out in the provinces, knows that there is a single fate for every man or woman who approaches the king without being invited: death. The one exception is that the king extended his gold scepter, his his gold scepter, that he or she may live. And it's been 30 days now since I've been invited to come to the king. When Hathach told Mordecai what Esther said, Mordecai said to her, sent her this message: Don't think that just because you live in the king's house, you're the one Jew that will get out of this alive. If you persist to staying silent at the time like this, help and deliverance will arrive from the Jews from some place else. But you and your family will be wiped out. Who knows? Maybe you were made queen for just such a time as this. Esther sent back her answer to Mordecai: Go and get all the Jews living in Susa together. Fast for me. Don't eat and drink for 3 days, either day or night. If my maids will fast with you, if you will do this, I'll go to the king, even though it's forbidden. If I die, I die. Mordecai left and carried out Esther's instructions. 3 days later, Esther, dressed in royal robes, and took up a position in the inner court of the palace in front of the king's throne room. The king was on his throne facing the entrance when he noticed Queen Esther standing in the court. He was pleased to see her. The king extended the gold scepter in his hand. Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. The king asked, And what's your desire, Queen Esther? What do you want? And it's yours, even if it's half my kingdom. If it please the king, said Esther, let the king come to Haman to dinner I've prepared for him. Get Haman at once, said the king, so we can go eat dinner with Esther. So the king and Haman joined Esther at the dinner as she had arranged. As they were drinking the wine, the king said, now what is it you want? Half of my kingdom isn't too much to ask, just ask. Esther answered, here's what I want. If the king favors me and is pleased to do what I desire and ask, let the king and Haman come again tomorrow to the dinner that I fixed for them, and I'll give him a straight answer to the king's questions. Haman left the palace that day happy, beaming, and then he saw Mordecai sitting at the king's gate, ignoring him, obvious to him. Haman was furious with Mordecai, but he held himself in and went on home. He got his friends together with his wife Zeresh and started bragging about how much money he had, his many sons, all the times the king had honored him, and his promotion to the highest position in government. On top of all that, Haman continued, Queen Esther invited me to a private dinner she gave for the king, just the three of us, and she's invited me to another one tomorrow. But I can't enjoy any of it when I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. His wife Zeresh and all his friends said, build a gallows 75 feet high, first thing in the morning, speak with the king, and get him to order Mordecai hanged on it. Then happily go to the king to dinner. A man like that, and he had the gallows built. The night the king couldn't sleep, he ordered the record book, the day by day journal of events, to be brought and read to him. They came across a story there about the time that Mordecai had exposed the plot of Bigthani and Thresh, the two royal eunuchs who guarded the entrance and who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. The king asked, what a great honor was given to Mordecai for this? Nothing, replied the king's servant, who were in attendance. Nothing had been done for him. The king said, is there anybody out in the court? Now Haman had just come into the outer court of the king's palace to talk to the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows he had built for him. The king's servant said, Haman is out there waiting in the court. Bring him in, said the king. When Haman entered, the king said, what would be appropriate for the man the king especially wants to honor? Haman thought to himself, he must be talking about honoring me. Who else? So he answered the king, for the man the king delights to honor, to do this, bring a royal robe that the king has worn and the horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crown on its head, and give the robe and the horse to the one of the king's most noble princes. Have him robe the man whom the king especially wants to honor. Have the prince lead him on horseback through the city square, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor. Go and do it, the king said to Haman. Don't waste another minute. Take the robe and horse and do what you have promised to Mordecai the Jew who sits at the king's gate. Don't leave out a single detail of your plan. That backfired on Haman, didn't it? So Haman took the robe and the horse. He robed Mordecai and led him through the city square, proclaiming before him, this is what is done to the man whom the king especially wants to honor. Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman fled to his house, thoroughly mortified. Hiding his face, when Haman was finished telling his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him, his knowledgeable friends who were there with his wife Zeresh said, if this Mordecai is in fact a Jew, our bad luck only has just begun. You don't stand a chance against him. You're as good as ruined. While they were still talking, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried Haman off to the dinner that Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman went to dinner with Queen Esther. At the second dinner, while they were drinking wine, the king asked again, Queen Esther, what would you like? Half my kingdom? Just ask and it's yours. Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it please the king, give me my life and give my people their lives. We've been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, sold to be massacred, eliminated. And if we just been sold off into slavery, I wouldn't even have brought it up. Our troubles wouldn't have been worth bothering the king over. King Xerxes exploded. Who? Where is he? This is monstrous. An enemy, an adversary, this evil Haman, said Esther. Haman was terror-stricken before the king and queen. The king, raging, left his wine and stomped out of the palace garden. Haman stood there pleading with Queen Esther for his life. He could see that the king was finished with him, and he was doomed. As the king came back into the palace garden into the banquet hall, a man was groveling on the couch on which Esther reclined. The king roared out, will he even molest the queen while I'm just around the corner? When the word left the king's mouth, all the blood drained from Haman's face. Herborna, one of the eunuchs attending the king, spoke up, look over there. There's the gallows that Haman had built for Mordecai, who saved the king's life. It's right next to Haman's house, 75 feet high. The king said, hang him on it. So Haman was hanged on the very gallows that he had built for Mordecai, and the king's hot anger cooled. Man, turn of events. Be careful on that one. Breakdown of Esther 4 1 through 7:10. For such a time as this, Esther is faced with a choice: stay silent and protect herself, or risk everything to save her people. Mordecai reminds her that perhaps God has positioned her as queen for this exact moment. Esther responds with courage. If I perish, I perish. She approaches the king, exposes Haman's evil plan, and ultimately sees Haman destroyed on the very gallows he prepared for Mordecai. The takeaway: sometimes God puts you in a position not just for your own blessings, but so you can stand up to others. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing obedience despite fear. You may be exactly where you are for such a time as this. 1 Corinthians 12 1 through 26. What I want to talk about now is the various ways God's Spirit gets worked into our lives. This is complex and often misunderstood, and I want to be informed and knowledgeable. Remember how you were when you didn't know God, led from one phony God to another, never knowing what you were doing, just doing it because everyone else did it. It's different in this life. God wants us to use our intelligence to seek to understand as well as we can. For instance, by using our heads. You know perfectly well that the Spirit of God would never prompt anyone to say, Jesus be damned, nor would anyone be inclined to say Jesus is Master without the insight of the Holy Spirit. God's various gifts are handed out everywhere, but they all originate in God's Spirit. God's various ministries are carried out everywhere, but they all originate in God's Spirit. God's various expressions of power are in action everywhere, but God Himself is behind it all. Each person is given something to do that shows who God is. Everyone gets in on it. Everyone benefits. All kinds of things are handed out by the Spirit and all kinds of people. The variety is wonderful. Wise counsel, clear understanding, simple trust, healing the sick, miraculous acts, proclamation, proclamation, distinguishing between spirits, tongues, interpretations of tongues. All these gifts have common origin, but are handed out one by the one Spirit of God. He decides who gets what and when. Wise counsel, clear understanding, simple trust, healing the sick, miraculous acts, proclamation, distinguishing between spirits, tongues, interpretation of tongues. Wow, that's a lot. He decides who gets what and when. You can easily enough see how this kind of thing works by looking no further than your own body. Your body has many parts, limbs, organs, cells, but no matter how many parts you can name, you're still one body. It's exactly the same with Christ, but by means of His one Spirit, we all said goodbye to our partial and piecemeal lives. We each used to independently call our own shots, but then we entered into a large and integrated life in which He has the final say in everything. This is what we proclaimed in word and action that we were baptized. Each of us is now a part of His resurrection power, refreshed and sustained at one fountain, His Spirit, where we all come to drink. The old labels were once used to identify ourselves. Labels like Jews or Greek, slave or free, are no longer useful. We need something larger, more comprehensive. I want you to know about how all this makes you more significant, not less. A body isn't just a single part blown up into something huge, it's all the different but similar parts arranged and functioning together. If foot said, I'm not elegant like the hand, embellished with rings, I guess I don't belong on the body. Would that make it so? If ear said, I'm not beautiful like eye, transparent and expressive, I don't deserve a place on the head. Would you want to remove it off the body? If the body was all eye, how could you hear? If the ear If all ear, how could you smell? As it is, we see that God has carefully placed each part of the body right where He wanted it. But I also want you to think about how this keeps your significance from getting blown up into self-importance. For no matter how significant you are, it is only because of what you are part of. An enormous eye or a gigantic hand wouldn't be a body but a monster. What we have is one body with many parts, each its proper size and its proper place. No part is important on its own. Can you imagine eye telling hand, get lost, I don't need you, or head telling foot, you're fired, your job has been phased out? As a matter of fact, in practice, it works the other way. The lower the part, the more basic, therefore necessarily necessary. You can live without an eye, for instance, but not without a stomach. When it's part of your own body, you are concerned with it. You when it parts when it's part when it's when it's a part of your own body you are concerned with. It makes no difference whether the part is visible or clothed, higher or lower. Excuse me. You give it dignity and honor just as it is. Without comparison, if anything, you have more concern for the lower parts than the higher. If you had to choose, wouldn't you prefer good digestion to full bodied hair? The way God designed our bodies is a model of understanding our lives together as a church. Every part dependent on every other part. The parts we mention and the parts we don't, the parts we see and the parts we don't. If one part hurts, every other part is involved in the hurt. And the one healing, if one part flourishes, every other part enters into the exuberance. Break down 1 Corinthians 12, 1 through 26, many parts, one body. Paul explains that God gives different spiritual gifts, but they all come from the same Spirit. Just as body has eyes, ears, hands, and feet with different functions, the church has different people with different gifts and purposes. Nobody can say, I don't matter, and nobody can say, I don't need you. The takeaway, your gift is supposed to make you independent. It's supposed to make you valuable to the body. Stop comparing your role to someone else's. Be the part God created you to be. Psalms 36, 1 through 12. The God rebel tunes in to sedition, all ears eager to sin. He has no regard for God. He stands insolent before him. He has smooth talked himself into believing that his evil will not be noticed. Words gutter from his mouth, dishwasher dirty. Can't remember when he did anything decent. Every time he goes to bed, his father's another evil plot. When he's loose on the streets, nobody's safe. He plays with fire, and nobody cares who gets burned. God's love is meteoric. His loyalty astronomic. His purpose titanic. His verdicts oceanic. Yet in his largeness, nothing gets lost. Not a man, not a mouse slips through the cracks. How exquisite your love, O God. How eager you are to run under your wings, to eat your fill at the banquet you spread, and you fill your tankards with Eden spring water. You're a fountain and cascading light, and you're open our eyes to light, keep on loving your friends, do your work in welcoming hearts. Don't let the bullies kick me around, the moral midgets slap me down. Send the upstarts sprawling flat on their faces in the mud. Break down Psalms 36, 1 through 12. God's love is greater. David contrasts the wickedness of people who have no fear of God with the character of God himself. Human evil can be deep, but God's faithfulness, righteousness, and steadfast love are greater. David describes God's love as reaching to the heavens and his faithfulness as reaching the clouds. The takeaway, don't measure God's goodness by the behavior of people. People can fail you. God remains faithful. When darkness surrounds you, stay close to the one whose love never runs out. Proverbs 21, 21, and 22. Whoever goes hunting for what is right and kind find life itself, glorious life. One sage entered a whole city of army soldiers. Their trusted defenses fell to pieces. Breakdown of Proverbs 21, 21, and 22. These verses say that whoever pursues righteousness and mercy finds life, righteousness, and honor. The Proverbs gives a picture of wisdom defeated a seemingly stronger opponent. The takeaway, don't chase a success at the expense of character. Pursue righteousness and mercy, and let wisdom be your weapon. You don't always have to be the strongest person in the room. You need to be the wisest. The thread through all four. Esther teaches courage. 1 Corinthians teaches purpose. Psalms 36 taught trust, and Proverbs teaches wisdom. If no one told you today, I love you and I appreciate you. We will see you tomorrow. It'll be August 20th. I love you. I love you. I love you. Have a better good night. We'll see you tomorrow.